First Take. The Golden State Warriors season ended short of the playoffs after losing to the Suns, 111-96 in the play-in last Friday. Now questions turn towards the future of the Warriors stars in the Bay Area. Here's Stephen A. yesterday on the potential of Steph Curry maybe moving on from the Bay Area. Listen.
What if Steph Curry was of the mindset that while I'm here, I still want to compete for championships, and we're not necessarily the franchise in position to do that any longer? Could you imagine, with his sniper-like ability, the greatest shooter God ever created, could you imagine if he were available? Could you imagine the amount of teams that would be looking to get the services of Steph Curry? That would be fascinating material for television for weeks on end.
Well, Stephen A., we're going to make fascinating material out of just the thought of it. The question now is, should Curry want to leave the Warriors for one last shot at a title? He would have to ask for a trade in order to do so. Should he do that, Perk?
You know I love Stephen A., but he get on my damn nerves sometimes. and no, Steph Curry should not want to leave. He's not available, and he should never be available.
Amen.
He is a dying breed, last of the dying breed. He is the Tim Duncan of this generation, meaning he's going to retire in a Golden State Warrior uniform. That should never come across our minds again. We should never have that conversation because it's bigger than championships. When you talk about San Francisco Bay Area, he is the greatest athlete of all time. When Joe Lacob bought that franchise for $450 million, that franchise is worth almost $11 billion. That's because of the power of Steph Curry. When you think of guys like Braun, when you think of guys like Steph and Giannis, guys who actually move the economy, move the needle, affect the economy, you can't ever let go of him, right? And when you think about what Steph has done in and out of the, in between the lines, outside of the lines, he is Mr. Bay Area. Regardless of the championships, he got enough championships. We can sit up here and debate different things all day long. The one thing I think we all agree on, he's already a top 10 greatest player of all time. He has changed the game forever. It's just on the front office. Mike Dunleavy Jr., do your damn job. Do your damn job and get some pieces in there, surround them around Steph Curry. We can have a legit shot at winning the damn championship because let's be honest, Mike Dunleavy hasn't really done much since Bob Myers has left that organization.
Steph Curry is a civic treasure in Northern California. If we can get Stephen A. out of Miami and L.A. and New York, he don't want to go up to the Bay Area. He's always whining about being in San Francisco. If you spend some time there, and I'm teasing my man Stephen A. and can't wait to see him back. Look, I'm fortunate enough to be able to go out a lot of years and be involved in Steph's charity, Steph and Aisha's charity event in Northern California. And you realize when people, Peyton Manning has come out to this more than once. You have people, you have athletes coming from all over because they'll come for Steph Curry. They come for Steph, and Steph realizes how rooted, how important he is. He's not going to go around popping his jersey. That's not what he does. But Steph Curry realizes he is an emotional center of greater San Francisco, of the Bay Area. So no, there's no leaving. I can't believe that. You and I come from a place where people would say, well, you probably couldn't see Michael Jordan leaving either, but there was an ownership situation at stake, something that he was promised that was derailed before it actually fully bloomed. But, Michael doesn't really acknowledge those 2 years in Washington as much as some other people, more than that, really, when you look at the executive years. I don't see Steph Curry doing that. Charlotte, would he go home? Could that be a possibility? Maybe if Charlotte was a lot closer. But Steph, again, if you are in and around that community and you realize what Steph Curry did, Steph Curry and his wife, Steph and Aisha, came up with a concept that's unbelievable, this mobile library, where Oakland in particular, which was so in need of any kind of assistance to an underserved community in this way, mobile libraries, they created this and people just jumped on board immediately to assist them in making this a prominent feature, of not just, yes, the Warriors and the community. This is Steph and Aisha's, they spearheaded this. And they do this with all kinds of endeavors. And so they are linked in a way emotionally, from my observation, that I just don't see Steph Curry withdrawing from that. I didn't mention basketball. I mentioned what he means to that place. And that's where Perk started too. Because we've been there and seen what that is like. And Steph is not immune or insensitive to that.
So I agree with everything you're saying. I just want to put one thing out there. We heard Steve Kerr talk after the loss, when their season was over, about maybe change is happening. Maybe my time here has expired. There's an expiration date, I think he said, on coaches. What if Steve Kerr is no longer there?
Well, then it's on the front office and it's on Joe Lacob to make sure they do their best to put the pieces around, including head coach, if Steve Kerr is not the head coach, around Steph. You got to do what you got to do when it comes to this type of greatness. And you start thinking of names, right? Or you start thinking of people who, not names, you start thinking of people who have publicly come out and say they want to play with Steph Curry. LeBron James has said it.
Yeah.
Giannis Antetokounmpo has said it. I'm looking at a guy down there in L.A. who just came off the best season of his career. Hey, try to go get a Kawhi Leonard over there and keep a Jimmy Butler and see what you could do with that. You might have to give up Draymond because of the money, but hey, at this point, you're trying to surround Steph with the best.
All right. Right now, he cannot really go anywhere. He would have to publicly, or I guess it doesn't matter, and behind closed doors, ask for a trade, which I think everyone agrees probably won't happen, but time will tell. Coming up here on First Take, Wemby has won the Defensive Player of the Year, but could an NBA title follow this season? Someone here? Not so sure about that. Plus, the Knicks and Nuggets both dropped Game 2 at home. Which loss does Wilbon think was actually worse? Fresh Hour First Take on the way next.